Hi everyone. I'm going to be participating in Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University soon, and I'm excited about it because, for one reason, it will be a great source of Excel challenge inspiration. And in preparation for the program, of course, I have already started to review and organize my finances in Excel using the strategies that he teaches. One of the first things he recommends is that people establish a monthly budget where every dollar you make in a month is accounted for and assigned a specific destination. On his website, daveramsey.com, you can go ahead and find a free online budgeting tool, which is great in helping you to advise you on how to divvy up your income across 11 broad categories. The main problem with this free online tool is that it is online, which means you can only use it online and you can't save your progress. This tool's other drawback is that you'll probably have to do some calculations on the side in order to figure out exactly how much to enter into each one of these fields, and there simply is no place to do so on this web page. And for these reasons, it's why today I'm going to show you how I went about recreating that tool in Excel, as well as a tool that helps monitor how well I am sticking to that budget. Now, for security reasons, I'm going to be using mock data. So first thing you're going to want to do is figure out how much your total household income is. Take home, that is. For my mock data, I used the 3-year average median household income in Dave Ramsey's home state of Tennessee. I divided it by 12 months and split that amount between two fictional people with two different revenue streams each. Again, keep in mind this is supposed to be take-home pay. This should be a fairly easy step for you. Just hand enter it, put the category name here, and then total them together. Next, you will want to figure out how much you can reasonably budget your household income. To do this, I established subcategories from these original 11, then reviewed my transactional history from my bank statements with those categories. Hopefully your totals will fall within the suggested ranges that you can find in Dave's free online budgeting tool. If your total does not fall within that range, then that might be a signal that that's an area worth adjusting in the future. Now, when I was brainstorming these subcategories, I color-coded them by their larger associated category. You'll notice that I have two sets of these. And the only difference between the two is in this smaller version, I combined car insurances and car maintenances and car loans, as Dave is a large proponent of changing one's pronouns from mine and hers to ours once you get married. And while I'm entering these values, I am also simultaneously keeping track of how much of the monthly income still remains. So while I was filling this out, I could rely on this field here, which is C10. Of course, that's the total income minus the total in this range here. And you don't have to use these same categories. Maybe you don't have student loans. Maybe you don't have 2 cars, whatever. You can customize this as much as you want. Just keep track of what larger category each one of these subcategories should fall into, because eventually, after you're done hand entering these fields, you're going to want to combine them together. Most of this should not be hand entered. All your hand entering are these fields and these. By only limiting how many fields you hand enter as opposed to relying on formulas will make it simpler if your budget ever needs to be adjusted in the future. Now, once you have listed all of your subcategories, you should aggregate them back to the original 11 seen here. And notice these are all formulas that can be as simple as just equals E26. Once you have this, I would recommend creating a summary table like I did here, with your income and expenses immediately following each other. This might seem redundant, but in fact doing so is going to prove useful in just a little bit. Make sure to have names for each one of these categories right beside each other. Alright, now once you have your estimated budget here, the next thing is you want a ledger. Now our ledger tab is where we are going to actually keep track of all of the actual inflow and outflow events. It consists of a 5-column table with the headers being date, month, activity, category, and money, written however you want. I'll explain them in a second. First thing I want to show you, if you don't already know, is how to actually make a table. You can write out the headers for your table. Go to Insert, Table. Have your headers selected. Select the box that indicates that your table has headers, and then hit OK. And there you have a table. Great. Now the first column is the actual date of the event, which is then grouped by the month using this formula here. Notice how I don't care about the ordering of these dates in column A. You can enter them in chronological order if you want, but it's actually not necessary for later purposes. The activity can be as broad or specific as of a description of the event as you want. What is more important for category, we want to make sure to limit these responses to only the pre-described income categories and the 11 outflow categories. And to do that, imagine this is our table. We select the first field in the table, go to Data, Data Validation, under Data Tools, Settings. We want a list, and we want a in-cell drop-down. Ignore blanks, doesn't matter if you have that checked or not, but in-cell drop-down box. For the source, this is the range of cells. We're going to go back to base and select all of these names, and that's why you wanted them grouped together like this. Hit OK. Make sure that's checked. Awesome. And there you have those 15 categories all listed right here. Lastly, we want to actually enter the dollar amount of that event. Now notice that this includes both expenditures as well as income, and despite this difference between types, they're all positive. Okay, and that's the ledger. Now the last thing that we want to do is create tables which compares our predicted spending amount, seen here, or estimated, with the dollar amount that we have thus far spent or organized or assigned for each month from I to forever. Right now it's just June, July, August, and keep in mind it's very important that this header represents for I through K are the first of each month. And you'll remember from my date video that even though it looks like it says this, actually the formula says this, even though actually Excel sees this. You just want to make sure it's the first day of each month in question in order to use the SUMIFS function for these cells. which calculates how much you've spent for each one of these months. But before we get to I, just real quick, G through H, these are just simply printed from what you had in the budget table seen here. Notice that H, the fields in H are not hard-coded, they're not hand-entered. They are using a formula directly linked to the base tab down here. Okay, just to make things easier in case you ever have to adjust your estimate. So back to columns I to forever. In I2, you see you have what might look slightly intimidating is equals SUMIF, and at this point I would recommend go ahead, insert function, and the first argument is what are the cells you actually want to sum. Go to your ledger and select all of column E. Okay. For the criteria range, one criteria that you want, criteria range is the range of cells that you want evaluated for a particular condition. So we're going back to the ledger again, and we want to select all of the dates in our ledger. Or more, actually, no, we want all of the months, which remember are also the first of each month. Criteria is the condition or criteria in the form of a number, expression, or text that defines. So basically, within this range in that other table, we want to look for this date. Okay, and for this one, we want to make sure to lock down the 1. So it only looks at the very top row, or the headers. Now secondly, note we also want the categories to be specific. So we need to go back to the ledger and select all of the categories. And the category in question needs to match up with the category in G. And this time for G, we need to lock G. Once you have that, hit OK. And there's the dollar amount that you need. You can click and drag the little black square all the way down until you hit total. And then total is kind of obvious. You're just, for here, we're totaling all of the expenses. You'll notice I have a blank row here, so you can delete this cell. And also this is a different calculated, just the sum of your incomes. There we go. Let's see what happens if I click and drag this field to the right. You notice there seems to be an issue here. Let's look at the formula. And it might not be obvious at first, but if you compare this formula here to the one to the left of it, you'll notice that the table columns selected from the previous table is different. So here we have dollar and month and category. This is date, activity, and dollar. And so what happened is the columns that you selected previously have been shifted over. And so when you're not dealing with a table, you can simply, like this, you can just lock the column or row. But when you select a column from a table, this happens. So to avoid this, you just select your area. Instead of clicking and dragging it, just copy and paste it. This way you maintain the same formula all the way across. And there you have how much you planned on spending and how much you actually spent. Now, just looking at this straight, it's not incredibly obvious where the difference is, except like you're expecting to spend $175 on charity and you spent nothing. So that's pretty obvious. But taking this a bit further, you can go ahead and in a very similar table, keep your estimate column the same and these first two rows the same. But you can also, once you have these numbers, you can also create a table that does the math for you and can compare what the difference is between your estimate and your actual. And what you see in my table down here is I have how much was actually spent first, and then in brackets I have the difference in between the estimate and the actual, and then I found what percentage my actual is of the expected. And so that's a lot of data to include in a single cell. So maybe you don't want to do that, but if you do, there are some advantages and disadvantages. Advantage, you have a lot of information in a single cell and it looks cool. Disadvantage, this stops being a number in Excel's eye. This is now a string of text. This is basically a sentence to Excel, so you can't add or subtract or divide or order. If you try sorting these, it'll try to sort these alphabetically, basically. But if instead you just want just like the difference, so the 0 here, or the percentage, then you don't have to do it. But let's see how I did this, just so you know, for future cases. So the things to point out are the ampersands and the double quotes. The ampersand, so if you are familiar with the concatenate function, you'll understand what the ampersand does. It does the same as the concatenate function. You can have two fields, B, A, and let's see what concatenate does, equals this text string, comma, this text string, gives you BA. Now, if we do instead give me this, ampersand this, notice it gets you the same result. Okay, now double quotes tells Excel that what you're about to enter is text. So you want to enter, in this case, a space. So first you're entering whatever's in I2 right here. And then immediately after that I2, we want to put in a space, which is right after the double quote, ampersand, double quotes, space, and then a bracket, and then close the double quotes, and then another ampersand. And then after that little piece, we want to include what is the difference between the estimate and the actual. And then we put another ampersand, another quote, space, or space, close the double quotes, ampersand. And then in order to do a percentage like this, you can't just do I2 divided by H2 because that's going to potentially be a lot of, it's going to be a decimal value, and it could potentially be a very long decimal value. So you want to round it, round whatever the result of this formula is, or number. This number value argument can be a formula that you enter. And then you want to round it 2 decimal places, so 2. And then you want to multiply this result times 100, so you have it as an integer. And you want to throw in an ampersand, and then you, in double quotes, you want to put in a percent and close the brackets that you started all the way over here. And that is how you get this result. You want it, take it or leave it, take any little piece that you want. If you're not trying to turn this into this sort of text deal, then maybe you don't even need to round. It's totally up to you. Now, this is pretty good, but it has one flaw. This whole strategy that I've explained here has one major flaw, which is with this setup, it assumes that we are going to apply the same estimate forever. Let's say we use this estimate for June, and then in July we adjusted it, and maybe before we got into July we had this result, and we had done our estimate perfectly. We just kept perfect in line with our estimate. But in July, we decided to change our estimate for some reason. And then once you change your estimate in the base tab, then June is going to look bad once you make the adjustment for July, because these are liable to change whenever your estimate changes, even if you only intended for your adjustment to your estimate to apply only to July. So if you want to be able to apply different estimates to different months, it's really simple. What you can do instead of having column H here like this, you can copy and paste basically H and just move it immediately below or above the month in question. And then once you have your estimates right above or below your actual, then you can adjust your formula to compare I2, which will remain the same, but your estimate will be located actually in the same column, I42, with nothing locked down. So before, we had H2 with the H locked in place to keep it in column H. If you use this strategy so that you can have multiple estimates for different months and keep it in line, it's a good idea, maybe. There you have a table where you can keep track of how well you are keeping on track with your budget. I'm going to stop it here for now, but in my next video I will move on in case you are not satisfied with monitoring your budget adherence in a table format. Next I will show you in my next video how I built this dynamic column chart which has your forecasting estimates as green columns and your actual as little red lines or dots or whatever you want, with the labels of how much you actually spent floating right above. So it's pretty cool. See the month down here and the legend is changing. It's a pretty cool chart, and I think it will make for a very interesting video. Thank you guys again so much for watching. If you liked it, please subscribe or like it, leave a comment or question, and I would also like to announce that I believe I have finally have a place where I can share these Excel file examples with the general public using Windows OneDrive, which is, I believe, somewhere in my channel's description. So look for that. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day.